Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. Hope you guys all had a great weekend. In the world of sports, it was a busy one. A lot of things happening with a lot of different sports. Obviously, if you're in the Canadian division in hockey, you're loving seeing the Toronto Maple Leafs really start to dominate their season, 14-3-2. Auston Matthews is on an incredible tear, as well as Mitch Marner, who's also playing some fantastic hockey. Then you got the Edmonton Oilers, who are, Connor McDavid, who saw Matthews put up 4 points in the opener Saturday night, and then he just says, hold my beer, and puts up a 5 spot with a natural hat trick. So a lot happening there. The outdoor game this weekend, the whole Saturday fiasco, which made the league look like a joke, to be quite honest. Sidney Crosby playing his 1,000th game. I'll touch on that. The Carolina Hurricanes. This team is so damn impressive. It's incredible. They got a great coaching staff. They got a bunch of players that you wouldn't think of that are playing great hockey. I talk about them today because nobody else will. Australian Open, two champions, the favorites, both going in winning pretty easily this weekend, and I'll talk about them and where I see the sport heading. Golf, the Genesis Open. The tournament started with a bunch of big names like Dustin Johnson, Justin Thomas, Morikawa, Bryson DeChambeau, and of course that's not how the weekend went. As it came down the stretch, it was down to more lesser known players, but it was a great tournament. Ended in a playoff hole. We saw Max Homa take home the Genesis Invitational. The Toronto Raptors, they've won 4 in a row, and they're looking like they could be a playoff team again here as we get to the midway point of the season. And also a big game last night between the Brooklyn Nets and the Los Angeles Clippers. So I'm going to try to get to as much stuff as I can here today. There's also a big game for Pierre-Luc Dubois last night in the nightcap of the Sunday night hockey action. But I'll start today's podcast by I'll talk about Toronto for briefly here. You can't deny what they're doing. They're 14-3-2. They're playing some fantastic hockey. I mentioned Matthews, Marner. They're playing better than they ever have. I think you look at Matthews. He's got 18 goals in 17 games. That's unheard of. Marner's got 30 points. Matthews 29. So they're third. They're tied for second, and then Matthews is third in points respectively behind McDavid and Draisaitl. And it's really impressive for the Leafs to have that record with John Tavares basically being a non-factor offensively, William Nylander basically being stapled to the bench Saturday night and not really being an effective player, them having injuries with Jumbo Joe was out a period of time. Wayne Simmons is still out. They've overcome a lot. I don't think it's a huge hurdle to overcome because I think the Canadian division is about as tough. How could I describe how the Canadian division is soft, and I'll get to that when I talk about the likes of Vancouver, Calgary, and just the lack of fight and ambition in some of these teams, which is really, quite honestly, quite pathetic. But Toronto can only play who they can play. Like they played Montreal Saturday, who I still, Montreal's hit a spurt here, and they're not playing their best hockey, but they're still a good team. The sky is falling in Montreal. I'm sure it's happening today with the media, and Toronto fans will revel in that. But they're not done yet. They still play Toronto 6 times, and they've gotten some points off Toronto this year. So it's not Toronto's gotten 5 out of 8 points. Good on them so far, and that's impressive for sure. But I look at Toronto and I think Matthews and Marner. I think Matthews can score 50 goals if he really keeps his eye. He's got 18 right now, the whole 50 and 50 type thing. He can, and there's a big reason for it. In this division, defensive play is a joke. It's a flat out joke. Montreal, I don't think Montreal is a terrible defensive team. So Saturday night's a mulligan when it comes to that because Montreal's biggest problem is they take too many penalties. We saw that. Suzuki's taken too many penalties lately. He's got a stick that he always reaches out with a stick. I watch him play. He takes these stupid tripping penalties. Then you see Shea Weber take a delay game, and then Toronto scores 2 goals in the second period within a minute. So you can't do that. Toronto's power play is deadly. It's lethal right now. So, but you look at Ottawa. I mean, Ottawa's a bad team. You can. There was a big game this week after Ottawa came back and beat Toronto. It was a Wednesday night big game. That wasn't a big game. You're playing Ottawa in February. Beating Ottawa 2-1, a gutsy performance. That's a media narrative that's stale and will not be talked about here. But I look at these teams. Edmonton defensively is terrible. I think Toronto is actually one of the better defensive teams in this division, and that tells you something because that's quite sad. They certainly gotten better at it. I think Matthews is a huge part of that. He's actually started to defend in his own zone and play, a 200-foot game, which he should have been doing for a while now. So credit to him. It took him a bunch of playoff losses and series losses to get that into his head, but he's playing like an elite NHL player. Last year, he scored 47 goals. He wasn't a 200-foot player. He was the Auston Matthews goal scoring show and the Auston Matthews drive-by show when it comes to defensive play. He'd see a guy with the puck and he'd do his little spin around, wheel around and not do anything with him. You see him start to engage physically. And this is where he can unlock so much more in his game. And you're seeing it. He's getting assists now. He's fourth in points. Last year, he would never be fourth in points because he wasn't getting assists. He wasn't working to get the puck in. When he's in the offensive zone, he loses the puck. He gets it back. He finds Marner or a line mate, and he gets a point. He wouldn't do that. The puck would just exit the zone easy and whatever. He'd wait till his next shift and try to score a goal. He's becoming more than just a goal scorer, which is a huge part of his development, I think, in becoming a true superstar, which, he's surely blossoming into right now. But I look at Calgary defensively. It's honestly pathetic. Saturday night against Edmonton, I don't know. And it's not just Jacob Markstrom. I don't think he was fantastic in the game by any means. But it's a no-show. And you see the space that Matthews, McDavid, that they have, that these D are giving them, they're going to score goals. And it looks too easy right now. But I watch the league. There's a lot of people, and I've actually heard it on TSN on radio stations, that people in Canada admit that they don't watch south of the border, which is ridiculous to me that you can admit that and you can still have a job, but you're covering the whole game. Just because the Toronto Maple Leafs are your focus and that's where you work in Toronto, that means you can't tune in to Boston or Carolina, Tampa Bay Saturday night. Because I watched some of that game because it was good. Two really good teams played against each other. Carolina gets a shutout with their third string goalie. But Leafs fans, your team's great. I'm not, again, take this with a grain of salt. Your team's great, and I think you're going to win this division. And in the playoffs, you should go to the conference final because who's your competition? Montreal, who, if you're a Leaf fan right now, you're probably like, okay, Montreal, yeah, no problem. We can get by them. Okay, check. You afraid of Edmonton? No, you dominated them all year. Their goaltending is a serious question. Do you trust their D-corps? No. Beyond McDavid, Draisaitl, and RNH, do they have anything that scares you? No. So check. Winnipeg, I think, is the toughest competition they can get because Winnipeg's actually going to play a physical game where they're going to have to force Toronto to engage in it. You're going to have guys like Adam Lowry, Mark Scheifele, Jansen Harkins. Kyle Connor can play that game. They got D that aren't afraid to get in the mud and grind and things like that. But you should beat Winnipeg on paper. So check there. Then you get to the conference final. You get the big boys. And this isn't the Canadian division where it's la-di-da, nobody gives a crap about systems, and let's just see what happens. You're playing the likes of coming out of the Central. You're going to get Tampa, likely Tampa. Carolina, I'm not going to rule out. It's early in the year, but I'm not ruling out Carolina. Boston's still there. We know if they're playing Toronto's already shit their pants. And then you got out west, you got Vegas, Colorado, or St. Louis. If Toronto played Vegas, pack your bags. You're golfing in a week. Good luck. So what I think this year is, what my big point here, For Toronto, they need to win. Of course, you want to win every game you can play. But getting to a conference final this year would be such an accomplishment. And is it going to have a little bit of an asterisk? Sure. And I think it should. Because what year do you just get to play the Canadian teams? None. In the history of the league, it hasn't happened forever. So there is a bit of an asterisk because next year, hopefully, with COVID and all this shit, hopefully it's done. And we can see every team play each other because that's the league I enjoy. That's the league I like to watch. But that all being said, you can take positives from this year. Do I think the Leafs are a Stanley Cup contender? No, I don't. I don't. Even if they make the final, it's this thing. If you make the Final Four, you were a Stanley Cup contender. Well, yes, but 2 years ago, Carolina made the conference final. They got swept by Boston. Were they really Stanley Cup contenders? They didn't win a game in the conference final. Were they that close to the Stanley Cup? They didn't get a game off them. That's what I think for Toronto this year, the biggest accomplishment they can get is get to the conference final. That'll erase that losing mentality, which has been there for a long time, but especially with their younger core. You get to the conference final, you're out of the blues. You're out of that stage of we're losers. We can't win the big game. We choke. That narrative's dead. You come into that next year saying, okay, we played Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay beat us last year. But you know what? They made the final. Maybe they've won 2 cups in a row at this point, and they got some veteran guys, and they know how to win. But guess what? We took something from that. We learned from that experience. Because there's not many teams that just go from choke job artists to win cups. It doesn't just happen instantly. But Toronto to win a couple series, like if they played, as of right now, if the season ended today, they would play Montreal. Beating Montreal would be huge for them. I think even beating a big rival in a series. We've seen them play Boston, one of their biggest rivals, multiple times, and they haven't won. But beating a Montreal, I think that's another check you can get off your back. You can say, well, we've moved past them. So that's a big step. But I think for Toronto this year, they need to stay engaged. I don't think I've said this last week, and I'll reiterate it throughout the whole year. Getting a huge lead in this division is an anchor for this team. I think it's terrible if they get a 10-plus point lead because the Toronto Maple Leafs and this team specifically, because I've seen it last year, are some of the best front runners in the NHL. What I mean by that is you get a big lead and they start to hot dog and they can score these nice goals and they can do their little celebrations and they're great at it because they got skilled players. When you get into that physical game after you played a month of hockey that was irrelevant because, we're going to finish this in the standings. So we know the playoffs start in a month. We'll get ready for it. Woo! Who says you're ready for it? Because the team that you're going to play that finishes 4th had to work their ass to get to the playoffs and play playoff hockey for a month before you are just hot dogging it and, not worrying about it. I don't trust the Toronto Maple Leaf team to change that mindset because I've seen them lose too many times. If you're a Leaf fan, you're probably listening to me, oh, he's crazy. Think about it. I'm right because this team, the past few years, the year they finished 3rd and they knew they were going to play Boston, they knew that for about a month because the division was so lopsided. They knew Tampa was going first. Columbus beat Tampa. Boston was finishing 2nd. They're up by Toronto by 10 points. And they were up by Ottawa by however many points. It didn't matter. They could play like shit the last month of the year, and they basically did. Freddie Anderson was a mess. He was not stopping pucks in March like he usually does. And they go into the playoff series, and they lost. And it doesn't matter if it went to Game 7 because you lost the series. For them, having a race towards the end of the year, I think would do such good things because it gets them in that playoff mindset of we need to win tonight. Because guess what? In the playoffs, you need to win tonight. It was all fine and good when they came back against Columbus last year when they were down 3-0. But guess what they did in Game 5? They got shut out. So it's their best option is for teams to keep winning. Winnipeg's on a bit of a stretch right now. They're playing good hockey. They need Winnipeg to keep winning. They need Montreal to find their game again. They need Edmonton to keep winning, to stay competitive in this division. Because you do not want to see a gap. And maybe the players would feel great about it because we got such a big lead And, the Toronto radio stations will have a field day because they can say, well, our Toronto Maple Leafs are just flying. And then even in a division like this, where they should go to the conference final, I'm saying that right now, they should go. If you're going to pick a team that should do something and doesn't do it, who would it not be? The Toronto Maple Leafs in the NHL? Who else would you pick? I mean, there's not too many other teams where you're like, okay, who should win but's going to fail? Maybe Buffalo, Edmonton. You could put them in there. Some of these really pathetic organizations, but you don't want that. I think Toronto has the full capability. They need to make some additions to the bottom of their lineup. Jimmy VC, that project has not worked. He's a total non-factor. He does nothing. Dermott as your sixth defenseman, I don't love him. I get on him about him being similar to my buddy Dawson Mormon, but I would not want him in the playoffs as my sixth defenseman. Again, you can make some smaller bottom of the lineup things, but the best thing Toronto can say is their big boys are chugging, Matthews and Marner. And in the playoffs, you're going to win games because your big boys are scoring. Braden Point played fantastic last year. Hedman played great. Kucherov. Yes, Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, their additions chipped in and scored big goals when they had to. But it's about the best players showing up at the right time of year. And they're doing it right now. So long story short, great win for Toronto. They got Calgary tonight, who I'm going to talk about here in a minute, is just a mess right now. It's beyond pathetic. But, for sure, Matthews, I'd be shocked if he didn't win the Rocket. Like I said, I think he could score 50 goals. Do I think he's the Selke winner? No, I don't, because he's played a good defensive week of hockey. I think you need to see it for a long period of time here. But Marner, Matthews, maybe they can push McDavid for points if they keep scoring at the way they are with the shoddy goaltending. When you look at across the Canadian division, Koskinen and Smith, I don't think a lot of people have confidence that they can stop Matthews. Murray and Hogberg in Ottawa. Okay, check, please. Carey Price has not been good for Montreal this year. That's another reason why they're losing. That second Matthews goal can't go in Saturday night. I don't care how good his shot is. That he has no screen. That can't go in. That should be stopped every day of the week. Again, I think he'll find his game, but the only goalies you can really say that you're really confident in are Hellebuck, and I normally would say Markstrom, but the team in front of him is so bad that his game has started to tip a bit. So it's not looking good right now. But it looks good for Toronto to have a big year statistically and probably a great year as a team before they head into the playoffs. So kudos to Toronto. I'll continue to talk about them. I'll continue to rag on the media attention and things like that because that's my brand. So, I got to stay consistent here. Pivoting to the late game that night, Edmonton against Calgary. It's third matchup of the Battle of Alberta. We finally see a fight, which was whatever, but again, no bite. I mean, I watched Friday night's game. Snooze fest. One thing for Edmonton, credit to Mike Smith. He's come back from injury, missed 10 games on IR. He's played really well since coming back. Him and Koskinen, if he's the starting goaltender in the playoffs, then, Edmonton's got bigger problems here. But he's played well since coming back. I think they need to do more of a tandem situation because Koskinen playing every other night clearly was not working for them. So him coming back will at least give Koskinen a break and give them a little stability in net. But, it was Saturday night. It was two things for me. It was a Connor McDavid show, and it was just how putrid the Calgary Flames are. So I'll start with McDavid. This guy is unbelievable. A 5-point first, they start 5-0. He gets the first 5 points of the game, including a natural hat trick in the second period. And, his passing, it passed to RNH on the second goal. Unbelievable. Just his vision, is skating when he stole the puck from Hannafin, flies down the ice, looks like he's going to pass the puck, and then shoots it just under the blocker of Jacob Markstrom. His skating, we talk about players that changed the game, and Crosby, obviously 1,000th game, that he comes to mind. But McDavid has changed the game when it comes to speed and just his awareness on the ice. Like his ability to pass the puck at the way he's flying, no player can do that. There's some great passers in the game. Marner, I mentioned Marner in the first segment. He's fantastic. He's not Connor McDavid. A guy who thinks a really underrated passer is Patrice Bergeron. He's not Connor McDavid. But you're looking at this guy, and he's incredible to watch. He's so fun to watch. He's electric when he's got the puck. And he has a big night with Jacob Markstrom in net for Calgary. So they had gone a couple games where he had been quiet on the score sheet, but Edmonton had been winning. So that's a positive sign for them because normally they win when McDavid and Draisaitl put up points, and that's it. I mean they struggle when you have to rely on the likes of Alex Chason, Jujhar Khaira, who I'm going to give credit to Jujhar Khaira, who fought Sam Bennett Saturday night. Sam Bennett threw a hit on Slater Cuckoo. I thought it was a clean hit. I mean, of course, every time now it's kind of a big hit and it's clean, it seems like you have to fight for it, which I don't love because it was a clean hit. But Cuckoo separated his shoulder. I think he's got shoulder surgery, so he's going to be out for a while. But Khaira stepped up, fought Bennett, and gave it to him pretty good. So good on him. But Edmonton, they're getting additions. I mentioned Puljujarvi. I think he's playing really good hockey. And I'd like to see him play without McDavid a little bit to see how he looks. But he's good. He's great with the puck. It's a big body who can fly. He's got good hands around the net. I like that he gets to that area. He's not afraid to get in there and dig a little bit. So Puljujarvi's really impressed me. Yamamoto has been solid with Draisaitl. Tyson Barries has a strong start to the year in Edmonton. Obviously, the project in Toronto was a disaster, but he's moved it to Edmonton. He's playing the power play, and he's getting some points playing with McDavid, so that doesn't hurt. And Nurse, Bear, their decor, they don't have. I think they play guys too much, but they're finding success right now. So credit to Edmonton. They're second in the Canadian division behind Toronto. I think they play Toronto Saturday night, so that'll be a big game. But we'll see what happens. But the opposition, the Calgary Flames. Calgary and Vancouver, it's really hard to pick who's worse in the Canadian division. And Vancouver, for the past 2 weeks, really has been the punching bag because they've just looked so terrible. Calgary has so many problems, I don't even know where to start. I'll start with just the basic premise of playing hockey, scoring goals. That's how you win games, right? They can't. Two games against Edmonton on the weekend. Edmonton is not a good defensive team. Edmonton does not have superior goaltending than Calgary. They scored 2 goals in 2 games against the Edmonton Oilers. 2 goals. Again, it was a flat out joke. I don't know. I look at Jacob Markstrom and he's beyond frustrated. I would be too. I think Chris Tanev played great for Calgary this year. Noah Hannafin's actually played pretty good hockey, who I'm a fan of. But I look at Valimaki, Merkley, who they sticked in there. They got Rasmus Anderson, who's playing too much hockey for what he is right now. And this is it's not all about defensemen sometimes. You need your forwards to chip in. Johnny Gaudreau, Sean Monahan, who's been injured and is a shell of himself after all his injuries. Their team defense is just so porous when it comes to transition. They turn the puck over, and it seems like every time they get the puck stolen, it's in the back of the net. And it's just bad decision after bad decision. And offensively, their best player, honestly, this year, and I'm not even joking, their best forward this year has been Majnapani. And credit to him. He's a little guy, and he plays with a ton of heart, and he's a spunky little bastard. But if Majnapani's your best forward, you're not going to win many games. And if you watch Calgary, one of the more effective forwards this year has been Milan Lucic, who's slower than a snail with arthritis, but he brings it. He's bringing it this year, and he's actually providing offense with the line of like Dylan Dubé, Lucic, Majnapani. That's been their three best forwards. Honestly, if you watch them consistently, which I do, they don't have, and who's really his ass has got to be on fire today. And they play Toronto twice this week, so they're check those for losses. They play Toronto twice. Brad Treliving's ass has got to be on fire. He's been there forever. He has not changed the core, which is a huge issue for me. Gaudreau and Monahan have been there through all the faults. That year they had a great year. They finished first in the West, played Colorado, came in big favorites. They lose in 5. They get fucking spanked. Came back with the same guys last year. Didn't work. And you're back with Monahan and Gaudreau again. And I have no problem with Gaudreau. I think he's a very good player, but he's not a number one. He's not an alpha. He's not going to be the guy to lead you to a championship. That's been proven. And Monahan is a shell of himself, and that's not all his fault because he's had so many injuries. I think it was 2-3 years ago. He had 8 off-season surgeries. 8. I mean, it was a wrist, sports hernia, one of his hips, maybe both hips, shoulder. It was incredible that he played through the year with everything that he had wrong with him. So he's not going to be the same player that he was, and he's not a number one center where you're like, okay, that guy's going to pot you 35 a year. He's just not that type. He's more of a two-way Jonathan Taves type center, but obviously not as good as Taves. But I just look at this team, and they gave Markstrom the money, 6 times 6. They gave Tanev a 5-year deal. What? It's going to be very hard to pivot. And maybe they can make moves on the fly where they say, okay, Gaudreau, Monahan, our core pieces aren't going to win. We need a new core, so to speak. We need new alphas. But to do that on the fly, with the team as big a disaster as it is right now, I think Treliving will be fired after the season. I predicted that before. You got Markstrom locked up. You got Tanev locked up. What's this team going to be? You have a number one goaltender locked up for another 5 years, and you're going to be going through a possible rebuild. That's a disaster financially. That's a disaster as a franchise. And you're going to have your elite players saying, what the hell did I sign up for? And, will Jeff Ward be back? He was assistant coach last year. They fired Bill Peters because of the Akeem Aliu, him being a bigot. And they gave him the job because he got them to the playoffs, and he deserved that. But is a new GM going to keep a guy who has no head coaching experience? Probably not. So you can probably expect a coaching change there. I just look at this and I think this is a disaster in Calgary because I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. They're playing pathetic hockey. And again, I love players, and when they're not playing good, I got to call them out too. Matthew Tkachuk has not been good this year. He's not been the same guy. He doesn't have that same energy every night. He doesn't drag guys into the fight. And I think that's half of it. Where this team, they need that guy to say, come on, guys, let's go. We need you to wake up here. We need to be in this game. Tkachuk's that guy. And I think you saw that last night in the Ottawa-Montreal game. Brady Tkachuk got his team into that game. That second period, against Montreal, they were flat, really flat, and Montreal dominated the period. They come out in the third, they played fantastic. And Tkachuk gets the OT winner because he's spunky, he turns the puck over, he gets 2 excellent chances, scores on his second one in overtime. Brady is doing that on a team that sucks. And Calgary is slowly becoming a team that sucks too. And I just don't see that from Matthew, who I consider the better player. But it's going to be interesting what they do in Calgary because I think you could see just complete change in management and in direction of the team. Because if you fire Treliving, the new GM has no attachments to Gaudreau and Monahan. He didn't draft them. He didn't sign them to extensions. So we'll see what happens. But it's interesting. Calgary's a mess. Again, they got Toronto tonight, which doesn't bode well. And Toronto twice this week. But again, Calgary, Vancouver, I don't know. I mean, Vancouver's at least playing competitive hockey lately, which you can't say for Calgary. Quickly before I move on to different sports, or before I move to the Central, Pierre-Luc Dubois, he had to quarantine for 14 days, then played 2 games and got injured. Came back last night. What a game for him. 3-point game, including the OT winner against Vancouver. And he was playing on a line with Scheifele and Wheeler, and that was a line. Scheifele 3 points, Dubois 3 points. They come back from 2-0 down after the first period to win the game. And that's what they acquired. And Scheifele this year, I think, has been playing the best hockey of his career. He'd be an outside guy to look at the Hart Trophy for me when it comes to, Hart Trophy's the most valuable to a team. I think Scheifele, it's hard to argue he's not the most valuable player in Winnipeg to his team night in, night out. What he does offensively, defensively, in a leadership position, just the guts he plays the game with, his hockey IQ. And I think Dubois is going to fuel off that. Do I think this line's going to stay together the whole year? No, because I don't think it can. You need more lines to contribute. But I had Winnipeg winning the division before the year. I'm not going to back off that. I think Toronto will probably win it. Yeah. But Winnipeg plays Toronto another 8 times. They've only played once, the second game of the year. Winnipeg's tough. If Hellebuck can find his game, their defense, note that if you had to do a power ranking on best defensemen in the Canadian division, it would be tough right now when it comes to the best ones, because there isn't many, if I'm being completely honest. But Dubois, I think he's going to be great in Winnipeg. I truly do. If you watched him last year against Toronto in the playoffs, is he going to be a 100-point player in his career? No, probably never. He might not even crack 80, but he's another Mark Scheifele where you look at him and you say, that guy can play the game. He knows the game so well. He's not just a one-trick pony. And that's what I really appreciate about his game. And last night, it was incredible the way he played. His first game back from an injury, again, after all that quarantine shit, he comes in there, OT winner, great way to get the guys going and get the team kind of gelling together and get you acclimated to the team, is to score a big goal like that and get back into the pace of things here. So good night for Pierre-Luc. Good night for Winnipeg. They've won 3 in a row now. So they're riding high, and they're a point back of Edmonton for second in the Canadian division. We'll go to the Central, and then I'll go to the outdoor game. The Central division, that's the likes of Carolina, Tampa Bay, Florida, Dallas, who's had some problems, obviously, with the big storm down there in Texas, which I hope everybody's doing okay down there. Columbus. So this division is tough. It's really tough, because you look at Tampa Bay, obviously defending Stanley Cup champions, pretty damn tough. Carolina has made the playoffs the past 3 years, including a conference final 2 years ago. You got Columbus, who made the second round after sweeping Tampa 2 years ago, made the playoffs the last 3 years as well. And you got Florida, who's nobody had really doing much coming into the year. But for me, I'm going to run through this quickly. The most, again, Hart Trophy, the definition. So before all the Leafs fans freak out, the Hart Trophy goes to the most valuable player to his team. The most valuable player to his team. It's hard to argue that Jonathan Huberdeau is not the most valuable player in the NHL right now. When it comes to Hart Trophy voting, he would have my vote. What would they be without him? Without him and Barkov, how would Florida look? If you look at Florida's lineup, if you're just a casual fan and you looked at their forward group, there would be 5-6 guys that you'd never heard of. Because guess what? At the beginning of the year, I didn't know them. I didn't, and I consider myself, aficionado of sports. Self-proclaimed. But Patrick Hornquist, the guy you'd know, but you don't expect much from him. He's got 8 goals already. You got Carter Verhaeghe, who they acquired on the scrap heap from Tampa Bay. A guy like Anton Strawman, who's a guy in Tampa Bay that, again, another Maple Leaf cast-off that has gone on to greener pastures. Chris Drieger, who's outplayed Sergei Bobrovsky this year. He's he's in Ottawa to begin his career as a guy that they kind of gave up on. He's now playing great hockey for Florida and has emerged as a number one goalie. So just some guys there. And Anthony Duclair, Alexander Wenberg, who was a Columbus cast-off. It's a cast of characters that were really given up on, and they've produced. I'll pivot to Carolina. Carolina, they beat Tampa 4-0 Saturday night with a third-string goalie, Alex Nedeljkovic, who's an American prospect because they got Mrazek out with an injury, so it's him and Optimus Rhyme right now. They look good. They look really good. They're just a balanced team, and they're starting to get production from guys they acquired a few years ago. A couple years ago, they traded Nino Niederreiter for Victor Rask straight up. It looked like a great trade, but neither player did anything. Actually, Victor Rask is starting to score goals in Minnesota this year too. That's kind of funny. But Niederreiter was a project that took a while to come together. He's got 9 goals already this year. Vincent Trocheck, a guy they acquired at the trade deadline last year, who Florida just gave away. The trade made no sense for Lucas Wallmark. He's got 8 goals. He's producing. You got, like I said, a third-string goalie getting a shutout against the defending Stanley Cup champions. They acquired Cedric Paquette from Ottawa. He scored a goal Saturday night. He's kind of a gritty forward that they have that is going to play the Rob Brendamore way and know how to play that way. And Jordan Staal has kind of found his game again. He's scoring. He had a 4-game goal streak. They have a workman-like team, but they do have some blossoming superstars. Sebastian Aho is right there. He's such an impressive player with his just the way he moves, the way he passed the puck, his shot. Svechnikov, I just think, is a pure goal scorer. I think he's a really good underrated passer too, but this kid's going to be a star. Drafted 3rd overall. He's got it. He's got the game. He's got the flash. I think he's got the finishing ability. He looks like a kid that can do good things. And I just wouldn't sleep on Carolina. And, you wouldn't hear about Carolina. You wouldn't hear about Florida. Because like they said, the Sportsnet and TSN guys are all talking about the Canadian division, which whatever. But there's more than just the Canadian teams. And this is why you tune in to The Point, because you're going to get to hear about every team. I'm going to do a podcast with Seamus tomorrow night. We're going to talk about each division. We'll talk about Canada, but we're going to talk less about Canada than the other 3 because that's just my personal preference. It's the other divisions have great teams too. And, tonight Carolina plays Tampa again. I'm watching that game. That's a must see. I want to see how Tampa responds to Carolina. Again, another team in this division that's gone probably the biggest surprise so far this year, the Chicago Blackhawks. Patrick Kane has willed that team to be competitive. They don't have Jonathan Toews. They don't have Kirby Dach. They don't have Brent Seabrook. They traded Brandon Saad. They unloaded a bunch of players that were going to be good players, right? Patrick Kane said, okay, well, I got these cast of characters, Pius Suter, Philip Kurashev, these young guys who have no NHL experience. I don't care. We're going to be competitive. Believe that. And they have. Kevin Lankinen, a guy that is a Finnish goaltender that they just found. He's playing great hockey. Patrick, if you watch the game Friday night against Carolina, just go back and watch it because I'm sure you didn't watch the game, but he does a spinorama backhander that goes by Reimer. It's unbelievable what this guy, he's an ageless wonder. I don't think he'll ever slow down. What he can do on the ice is just incredible. And I just look at this division. I say, this is tough. It surpassed the Canadian division as the second toughest division in hockey. It's clearly for me. I look at the bottom, you got Detroit down there, but I look at Dallas, I look at Florida, I look at Columbus, Chicago's competitive. 3 teams right now in the Canadian division aren't competitive: Calgary, Vancouver, and Ottawa. That's 3 out of 7. So again, I'm going to keep you guys up to date and what's happening around the league, because these teams are going to be in the conference final too, and you're going to get to a conference final where you're like, well, who the hell? Carolina? What the hell did they do all year? Well, they were winning games, beating the defending Stanley Cup champions. That's what the hell they were doing on a back-to-back, no less. A shutout on a back-to-back after beating Chicago Friday night. So Carolina, damn impressive win. They've had an incredible start to the year, and kudos to that team for bringing it night in, night out. It's not only the Maple Leafs that are just beating up the league. The outdoor games, plural. Saturday was a bad day for the NHL. My friend Matt Wright, who's been on the podcast, you've heard him before, he texted me, and he texted me a few things, and we had a good conversation about it. He said it's a bad day for the NHL, and the first thing that he said I had already thought about. I'll bring up his point later, but yeah, the first outdoor game. You started at 4:00. I was watching it here. The ice looked like shit. You could tell. They play the first period. Everybody's flopping around. They have to stop the game. It only starts up again at 1:00 Eastern here. It was supposed to start at 4 in the afternoon. So a complete joke for the league. It looked really bad. It's, Bush League, to say the least, of how they handled it, and that the ice wasn't ready. And, I fault the NHL for not being prepared. The weather, what you got to do to have these outdoor games, and, to have a spotlight Saturday afternoon, Colorado, Vegas, which are 2 of the elite teams in this league, and to not have that game, that's a tough look. That's a tough look for the league. So that was Bush League. They eventually got that game going, and Nathan McKinnon put on a show, and Colorado beats Vegas for the second straight time this week, 3-2, and they play tonight, and they play again tonight. These 2 teams, if you look at, and again, that division, I'll talk about that more with Seamus tomorrow, and I'm sure that game will be brought up, but Colorado, Vegas, St. Louis, these teams are good. And again, they're not talked about a whole bunch, but they're catalysts, and they'll be there at the end of the season. But it's tough to have that game move, because it would have been great to have it in the afternoon. 2 Western Conference teams. There was no other games on at the time. And that would have been fantastic, because you got 2 teams that nobody usually watches, because you're either you're in bed, or you got other shit going on at that time of the night. And, it's unfortunate that the NHL lost that ability to have that kind of spotlight game be front and center for the league. Then Saturday night, this is Matt Wright's point. I agree with him, and I never thought about this after, but I'm going to bring it up because he brought it to my attention that he deserves the credit. He texted me and said the NHL really screwed up today, not having Sidney Crosby's 1,000th game being a national TV game. And I think he's completely right. Again, there's some problems because NBC is going to have the outdoor games. That's a big spotlight game, and you can predict injuries, whatnot. But you knew he was going to play for about a week plus. Now that he was going to play in his 1,000th game, it was going to be on a Saturday against the Islanders, who he played his first game against. Who's got the most points against. And again, I'm not a Sidney Crosby fan. I'm not his biggest fan. I appreciate what he brings to the game. I think he's one of the biggest whiners. I think him and LeBron James are 2 of the biggest superstar whiners in the history of professional sports. But what he's done, is he a top 5 player? Yeah, of course. He's a fantastic guy. He's a great spokesman for the league. When it comes to, well, he's not really a great spokesman for the league because he's so boring and vanilla, but he's a great poster boy. You can say to your kids, you want to be like Sidney Crosby. I guess the kind of attitude you want and things like that. So, but to not have that nationally televised on Sportsnet up here or NBC down there it's a bad look for me. And I agree with Matt. Again, it was Toronto, Montreal Saturday night, and of course, everybody in Canada is going to spoon over that game. It should have been Pittsburgh Islanders. It really should have been, because Sidney Crosby, an icon of the game, playing his 1,000th game, who's done it forever, who's won 3 Stanley Cups, who's, I said, a top 5 player. You can move the Toronto game, who you can watch Toronto and Montreal play another 6 times this year. It's not going to kill you. Put it on Sportsnet 1, do whatever the hell you put this on CBC, make this the headlight game, the headliner. And I think Matt was dead on the money. And I think it's a fault of the NHL and of, again, the Sportsnet in this instance, not having that game be nationally televised. Do the game remotely. I mean, we've seen guys, I don't listen to the sound, but I know Ray Ferraro is in Vancouver. He's calling games remotely. Guys are doing it all the time. So have Craig Simpson, have Chris Cuthbert do the game from Toronto or wherever they are, and have Pittsburgh and the Islanders be the first of the doubleheader. Then you can still have your Battle of Alberta, which is your backup game, your second of the doubleheader. You can have that. And Toronto, Montreal can be broadcast on Sportsnet 1 with, whoever's calling. I don't care. Again, I don't listen. So whoever's calling the game. Jim Houston calling it remotely. I'm sure everybody's clamoring to hear him. So I just thought I'd bring that up because I think it's a good point. And I never thought about it until after, but I said, you know what? It's important to put that spotlight. And it's not just, okay, we got to show on SportsCenter, we got to have the first highlight be Sidney Crosby. No, that's not the way to do it. And I think you got to appreciate your superstars, and he's made these companies a hell of a lot of money, and he should be rewarded for that with a national TV game. And I don't really, to be quite frank, I don't really give a fuck about the Torontos and the Montreals of the world in that game. This is a bigger deal. Did I watch a second of the ceremony? No. I watched a good portion of the game, but did I watch him get the stick and, the emotional tribute? No, I didn't. I'm not a big, there was games going on. I'd rather watch live sports. And if you know me, I've been nicknamed before the human cyborg. So I'm not big on emotion and sentimentality and stuff like that. So, the other outdoor game last night, my guy, David Pastrnak, just put on a clinic, 4 points, including a hat trick. Boston Bruins with a 7-3 win over the Philadelphia Flyers. Boston's look really good. I think this whole season they've been one of the more, again, them in Toronto, Carolina, they've been some really consistent teams. They played fantastic. Pastrnak missed the start of the year, but he's already got 9 goals. The guy's a flat-out superstar. And I liked how they walked in together. The retro look from the Bruins. They were having a ton of fun the whole game. For Philly, the biggest thing for me is, Carter Hart. I think the Philadelphia Brass needs to make a phone call to Carter Hart and just tell him on the phone, just like, hey Carter, you're a goalie, right? Yeah, you're paid to make saves. You should probably do that. The guy's can't stop a beach ball. Last night was a close game, 3-2. 5 minutes left in the second period. He lets in 3 goals in about a 2.5 minute span, where all 3 are very stoppable pucks, and it was a disaster for Carter Hart last night. And it's been a disaster this year because he does not look confident. He's not settled in the net. He's letting in some really squeaky goals, and it's just, he doesn't look comfortable. And for him being the next Carey Price, so to speak, the next phenom when it comes to goaltending, he has not produced at the level that you expect. And it's tough for him right now. But that was my biggest thing of the game. I thought the game was last night, when it comes to outdoor game and the ice and everything, I thought it was fine. The backdrop of the game was fantastic. Seeing the mountains and the look of it, clearly superb. Do I ever think they're going to do this again when it comes to remote location? No, because they're going to want to do it at football fields. They want to do it at the big house again in Michigan, or they'll do it in Toronto at TFC, their field, because they want the attendance. They want to sell 60,000 tickets, and you're not going to do that in Lake Tahoe. So, but it was, again, the first day was a complete gong show. That's a red mark on the NHL. But second day it goes off. pretty easily. The game wasn't fantastic last night, like I said, with Carter Hart just being a no-show, but good on the NHL during a pandemic to at least get these games off. And they scheduled two really good matchups, so I give them credit for that too. Not seeing garbage. I remember a couple years ago it was like Buffalo and Detroit or something like that. Nobody wants to watch that. So good on the NHL for making it a game that people are interested in and getting the game off. Pivot to the Genesis Invitational yesterday. And this whole weekend, it was about, I even said it, it was about the big name players, Dustin Johnson, everybody DeChambeau coming back. DeChambeau missed the cut. Bryson struggled. He was 4 over on the first day. It didn't come close. Dustin Johnson played well through his first 36 holes. Then he got to the weekend, he really couldn't find it. The weather conditions were terrible. Saturday, it was delayed due to wind till about 4 o'clock. Just after 4:30, they started play again, and Sam Burns had a sizable lead. Parts of Saturday, he had a 5-stroke lead. He had led the whole tournament since Thursday, and he had the lead going into yesterday. And he just melted. He lost strokes. He was not, his driver wasn't working. I mean, everybody was struggling on that course yesterday and Saturday for that matter. But Sam Burns still had the lead about the 16th hole. Then Tony Finau made eagle on 17 to get the lead. Max Homa, who was right in contention, he birdies 17. And it was Sam Burns was down by a stroke. So he finishes 11 under. At this point, Finau and Homa are at 12 under. And you get to 18, and Finau taps in for par. So he knows he's finishing 12 under. That's a score. Homa gets a great second shot to about 5 feet out. He's an easy putt away from winning the tournament. It's about, like I said, about a 5-foot putt, and he hits it way too fast. It rims out, and he pars it. So they're going to a playoff hole. So at first I'm like, okay, well, Tony Finau, who, if you're a golf fan, Tony Finau is known for being in the top 5, but just can't win the big events. He chokes away the big events. And I'm like, well, Homa just choked, so maybe this is Finau's tournament to win. They go to the first playoff hole. They both par it, so that's a wash. In the second, they go to the par 3 14. And Finau just chunks the first shot right off the tee. And it's a mess. It goes into the bunker. He has to chip it out. Then he has to 2-putt, so he bogeys the hole. Homa just has to par the hole, and Max Homa wins the Genesis Invitational. It was a loaded field. He played really consistent. He was always at the top of the leaderboard behind Sam Burns. But Sam Burns has got to look at this event as a really missed opportunity. He led the whole tournament till about the 15th hole. That was when it finally got tied. He got tied for the lead. He threw away the tournament. And for Homa, he capitalized. He missed an opportunity to win the tournament on 18. He regroups. He wins it in the second playoff hole. Big win for him when it comes to his career. He guarantees himself to play at majors. He gets a $1.675 million purse, which doesn't hurt. And for Tony Finau, I mean, this is his career. He's a guy, even in majors, he'll get to a top 5, and he gets to Sunday, and he can't figure it out. He can't find a way to win it. And he's one of the better golfers in the world, but he's still missing something from his game, where maybe it's that clutch gene, it's the nerves, where it just isn't there for him. And on 14, that shot went in the sand, and Jim, you could tell it was over for Finau. So congrats to Max Homa. Also Tiger I listened to that brief interview where Tiger didn't really give you much, which he normally doesn't do. He didn't say yes or no to playing at the Masters in a little over a month. I think he'll play. His back, I think, will have to be really, really bad for him not to play at Augusta. It's his best chance at winning another major. If I'd hammer money on him there. At the rest 3 majors, I would put a cent on him because these courses now, you have to hit the ball so long and so far, and he just can't do that anymore. Augusta, you can win that tournament by just knowing the course better than your opponent, being strategic. And nobody knows Augusta National better than Tiger Woods. So I expect to see him in early April at Augusta National, but he didn't say yes or no, but we'll see. We'll see what happens the next couple of weeks. Still have the Players before that, and some other good tournaments before we get to the first major of the 2021 season. Other news, yeah, Australian Open. Naomi Osaka, Novak Djokovic, both winning their respective titles. Osaka beating Jennifer Brady 6-3, 6-4 straight sets. Her fourth major, 2 at U.S. Open, 2 in Australia. I think she's clearly the best player in women's tennis right now. She surpassed Halep. She surpassed, Angelique Kerber just by being so consistent, having won the last 2 majors she's competed in. Hard court is definitely her strength, but for her moving forward, it's about, winning the French, winning Wimbledon, and, winning all the slams and truly becoming the face of the sport and dominating it. But for her, just winning this event's a big deal, and you're beating Serena to get there. I think Serena kind of broke down after the match for a big reason, because she knew to win, she's got to beat Osaka more than likely. And I don't know if she can do that at this stage in her career, but congrats to Naomi. She's really fun. I think she's really fun on and off the court with her social media, with her antics, and just with her demeanor towards the media. So I like her. And then, this final, it was going to be Djokovic, Medvedev. I thought we'd see a closer matchup. Turns out it was just a blowout. First set, Medvedev hung in there. It was 6-5 first set. He gets broken for the set by Djokovic. And then after that, it just unraveled for him. He was broken on his second serving game of the second set. He was broken on his first serving game of the third set, losing 7-5, 6-2, 6-2. Djokovic's 9th Australian Open title, his 18th major, which puts him 2 behind Nadal and Federer. Again, these young guys that are starting to move up. Team broke through, but Team won the U.S. Open he didn't have to defeat Nadal. He did not have to defeat Djokovic. So he broke through without beating any of the big 3. You got Medvedev, who's gotten to 2 major finals. He's lost to Nadal and Djokovic. These guys that are the next gen who are trying to propel themselves, they can't win the big match against these older guys, against the guys that have done it forever. And, Team's been great. He's played Nadal twice, French Open on grass. Couldn't beat him either time. Again, I mentioned Medvedev. It's Zverev is another guy who's played Djokovic a few times late majors. He couldn't beat him. So Djokovic, Nadal are still at the top of the sport right now. Roger Federer, I don't put him in that group because he hasn't played in over a year, and he hasn't won a major in 3. He's like Serena Williams. They both haven't won majors in a long time. So, but these younger guys that want to try to push through, they still need to go through the old guard, because the old guard is not giving up their place at the table. And for the likes of Medvedev, the likes of Teams, Zverev, I even think of potentially Felix Auger-Aliassime, you're going to have to find a way to beat these guys, because they're in their mid-30s, but they're still playing very high-level tennis. And I know, for Nadal, he's going to keep playing every year at the French because it's almost a lock win. If he didn't win the French this year, I think he'll surpass Federer for most Grand Slam titles, because he'll play the French in May and June. He'll win it. It'll be his 21st major. I mean, he's played that tournament. He's only lost it twice. He lost to Robin Soderling once, and another loss to Stan Wawrinka in his career. That's it. He's only lost there twice in his whole career. Djokovic, again, he owns Australia. He's won it 9 times. Wimbledon has really become his course too. His major. He couldn't play there last year because it was canceled due to COVID. It's scheduled to be on this coming year. Who knows when it comes to Britain and what will happen there? But it's a good chance we're still going to see these guys win majors and be at the top of their game for a long period of time here. And I think tennis is you still have the older guard that they're still owning the sport. You like to see these younger guys push through, but it's still proven to be the best, you got to beat the best. And for these younger guys, you got to beat the older players that have done it forever. It's not going to come easy. You're going to have to earn it, but winning a major against one of these guys in a final would be huge for the sport, and I think would rattle it, because if, say, a Medvedev does beat Djokovic at a Wimbledon or a US Open, that's a huge win. And that's a bigger, to me, that's a bigger major win than Team beating Zverev. Because Team, like I said, did not have to beat Djokovic, did not have to beat Nadal. You beat Zverev, who has not won a major, who's not really a big name. So for one of these guys, if they can break through, I think they'll get a lot of credit from the media, and it'll be well deserved, because you beat one of the quote unquote GOATs to get there. But yeah, it's, again, the Raptors winning 4 straight. I won't gloss too much over that. They've beat Milwaukee twice last week. They beat the 76ers last night without Kyle Lowry. They're playing great basketball. They look like they found their game. The All-Star game's in about 2 weeks, so see what they can do before then. The Brooklyn Nets beat the Clippers for the second time in 2 weeks. They're looking like a powerhouse without Kevin Durant. So they're looking like the team to beat. That includes the Lakers for me. They look like a team that you don't want to mess with. You don't want to play in the playoffs. But that's really going to do it for today's show. A lot of different things packed into this episode. But obviously a lot of hockey on the focus right now. There's still going to be some NFL news, I'm sure. Like I said, tomorrow night I'll be joined by Seamus Fillmore. He's going to pick a new show tomorrow night too that we're going to cover. But before that, we'll talk about some sports. We'll talk about some hockey in the divisions. Wednesday night, I'm going to be joined by my friend Brendan Roach. We're going to talk, just bounce around the NHL. He's a big Leaf fan, so we'll talk about his Leafs. We'll talk about the Canadian division and everything happening around the NHL. And I'm hoping to get some more guests lined up towards the end of the weekend, including a panel that I plan on doing in the not too distant future about the Canadian Olympic team and players that you're going to pick, players that are going to be off the list. And I plan to do that with two or three guests who appear on here often. So that's kind of on the horizon. So I'll keep you guys in tune for that. But have a great week. Like I said, I'll be back tomorrow. But until then, everybody have a great day. Enjoy your Monday, and we'll talk soon.